Hi guys, today let's talk about forms or HTML forms. Now HTML forms are used, for example, getting data from a user and stuff like that, like surveys, what else? Maybe authentication and such. So we are only going to talk about the basics to know what we can do with it and how can we use it. So the attributes available in HTML forms are one of them are the action attribute, and the action's value takes in a URI or pretty much a server, or you can also specify a file, no, not a server, but an API or a file that will process the values or the information inside of the form. And there is also the method attribute. There we go, which will have the get method and the post method. Although I don't know what the dialog method is, but it does focus on these two. Now the methods get and post are part of the methods available in HTTP requests. Now those are the requests like get, post, put, delete, patch, and so on and so forth. Now get is usually used to get data from an API or to send non-sensitive data to an API or to, let's say, a server or a file that will process, again, your request. And post and the method of post is used to create new information using the information that you passed on to that request, which was available inside the HTML form. For example, the input and other stuff like select or buttons. No, is it buttons? Oh no, checkboxes, radio, and such. Now, the default method for HTML forms is the get method. So if we don't, let's say, explicitly set the method for the HTML form, we will get, the get method. So if we try to send this over to our to the URI or to the API http :// localhost 9000, we will get the value, or we will pass on the value to this API. And right now it is empty, as you can see, because in a get method, the body or the body's request will not be available inside of, the request. This form right here, this form action with the method of get will not append or insert the form data inside of the request's body. And if we check our manual, like local development API, it's just a simple Express framework, or it's just a simple API that uses the framework, which will just send a response of request is whatever's inside the request body. And right now, the request body is empty. Additionally, we're using body parser here, so take note. And one more thing to note is that requests with the method of get will append the data that is available inside the form to the query strings of the URL. So query strings are pretty much what is used for search queries. For example, like if you're searching on Google and such. Now, this is not recommended for sensitive data because, it can be seen in the URL. The get method is usually used when a user wants to save or bookmark the result that is sent from this API or from the server, let's say, while the post method is used to create something new. So for example, if we want to say that the method is equal to the post, save that, and try to input something here, for example, a@gmail.com, and username will be sanctuary. And now the request body is available. And the URL also does not contain the sensitive data, which is our email and our username. And if we check the network tab, we would have the request method of post. And if you noticed, when I click this again, we have the key of email and the value inside. So this key right here comes from the name attribute of the inputs that are inside of the HTML form. So if I change this name right here to, let's say, password, although it's not a password, let's just try it out and try to submit this. As you can see, the key changed to password. So try to change this back to email. And that's pretty much it for, let's say, HTML forms in static HTML. But we can take this one step further to actually make the form submission more flexible and more favorable to us. And that is through the usage of JavaScript. And to access the contents of a form using JavaScript, first, of course, we need to get this element. And to do that, one of the ways to do that is to declare an ID and a value. And inside of that, or inside of the JavaScript that we're using, we will grab that HTML form and using the its ID, which is right here, its ID of form, and then we'll just append an event listener to that HTML form. Wherein on submit, we will run a callback function, and inside that function we have a parameter of e, which is, well, the event, just like in events like keyboard down, keyboard up, and such. And this E, or event right here, we can prevent its default behavior. And its default behavior is, well, the one like this, wherein it will go directly or submit the information directly to what is specified inside the action attribute, and will also redirect or direct the user to this endpoint right here. And there's also such a thing as target, which is pretty much, let's say, an A tag wherein blank will direct the user to a new window on submit, just like this. Okay, anyway, let's go back to our JavaScript. And now let us actually try to submit this. So on submit, we want to prevent the default from happening. So if I try to submit this, well, nothing will happen. So that is what we want when we want to control the HTML form submissions behavior. Okay, now to actually get the data within a form element is to have the to get or to have a new form data object, and then this will accept a parameter of an HTML element, and we can pass on the target of our event, which is the form that we just submitted. So e.target. So now if we try to console log the form data on submit, we will get, well, a form data, which is a class, and it has an available get function, and this get function will return to us whatever we specify inside of this function. Or rather, the one that we specify inside of this function will be the name of the input. So for example, we have the input name of email. So we pass on the parameter of email in here. Then that means this form data that get function will return to us the value of the input with the name of email. So if I try to save this and click submit, we will get an empty string because this input is empty. So let us just try to have something. Say at a@gmail.com and submit. There we go. We get the value of the input with the name of email. And we can do the same with, let's say, username, and try to say that this username will be equal to the sanctuary. There we go. Okay. So to get all of this, we can do const data is equals to object dot from entries. So we will get the object from the entries of form data dot entries. So entries are pretty much the each object keys inside of the form data. So if I try to console log the data now, mhm, and on submit, we will get the object of email and username. And again, these keys are based on the value of the name we give each input that is inside of the form that we just submitted. For example, we change it to password again, and now the key will be password. Okay, let's turn this back to email. So let's try to actually fetch something to this, or let's try to send this data over to our API in JavaScript. We can use Axios, but in this case, we are just going to use the inbuilt native API, which is fetch in JavaScript. So let's turn this into an asynchronous function. And then let us say that we want to const response is equals to await fetch, and then the URI or URL of the API. So let's say localhost 9000, and let me just actually say http slash, there we go. And we can also have the options right here. You can say method, what kind of method, and again the default behavior for this will be get. So if you say method of get, and then we want to have a body equal to the data right here, and of course we should stringify that in here. So JSON.stringify, because we can only send strings, if I am not mistaken, to APIs. And content type, is it content type here, or do I need to insert it in headers? Okay, so the headers will have content. Okay, let me search that up once again. Oh, right, I forgot that get methods do not have a body, so we cannot have a body here as well. Whew, my bad. Anyway, let's try this and try to console log the response that we get. Let's see, failed to fetch. Okay, let's try to remove the headers then. Submit this again. Failed to fetch. Ah, right, I forgot the course, to use course in my server. Okay, wait a minute, I will download it real quick. Okay, I found the other way besides using JSON. Alright, so in here, so what we're pretty much doing is, first, we are fetching this URI or URL, you can say. So there's a difference between URI and URL, but I'm not like 100% sure about the two of them, so I can't explain them clearly right now. However, the both of them stands for unique, and then the R, I'm not sure, but the I stands for identifier and L for location. Anyway, let's move on. So if I remove this method of get, then we will get this still from the get method from our API. Okay, but if we specify that the method would be a post method, and say that the body would be equal to, let's say, of course, don't forget to stringify your JSON. And stringify, pretty much what it does is turns your object to a string. And if we check here, we can see our local storage. Oh, we don't have one. Maybe cookies? We don't have one as well. Well, maybe we can see it here. There we go. Your post request is, but what's missing? We need to have maybe the headers. Sure. The headers, and then content type is JSON. Maybe like this. Ah, right. We got the comma there. Try this out. There we go. Okay. So this pretty much means is that we're specifying in this request is that we want the method to be a post. That means we want to create something new. And then in the headers, we want to specify what type of content will this be. When this, well, this content will be that of a JSON, and I'm not sure about the application. Of course, the body would be the content of our post request. And in here, we have the post request value, which is the email and the username. Okay, so let's actually try to console log a stringified object. So let's just try using that stringify. Oh, there we go. Then say hello world. So this will look like a string. There we go. This is a string. But if I console log this object just the way it is, then we will get something like this, as you can see. And we can also say this like console the table, and this will look like a table. But if I stringify this, there we go. And this JSON.stringify also comes with JSON.parse. So for example, we want to parse this JSON.stringify. So we will still get an object here. There we go. So anyway, JSON.parse will parse a string, and of course that string should be a JSON or anything, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, JSON.parse will convert a string to, well, something that is used in JavaScript, for example, a JSON or an object. I haven't tried it with arrays, I think, so far. Well, let's try to actually use it in arrays. So, for example, we have a string array here, just as hello and world. Let's see if it works. Ah, there we go. Try to console log it. They should console log an array. There we go. Okay, so it works like that as well. Ooh. Anyway, we also have other methods like put and delete, but all of them are pretty much the same, but of course also have differences. Like in put, it means that we want to update contents. And in delete, well, we want to delete a content. All right. One more thing is that when we expect a JSON object from a response, then we should have this as response.json. But if we expect a string to be returned, for example, a message, then we want to use response.text. But mostly you will be using response.json. And this is an asynchronous operation, so you should always have the promise. Anyway, you can refer to my previous video, which is about asynchronous if you have trouble understanding about this here, which is async and await. Alright, that is all for this video, and I hope you learned something about HTML forms. Oh, and by the way, you can actually form like use let's say state loaders here. So let's say for on submit we want to set a loading to true, and then after waiting to parse for everything here, then we can set the loading to false by then. And also, this is usually how I do it, because if you noticed earlier, the form is actually refreshing, or rather directing us to the URI or URL of what we specify inside the action. And ideally, I don't really like it that way because I want to stay on the page, especially as a user. And yeah, I think that's it. Okay. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something. Good luck on your development journey. Bye bye.